to the Legal Edge Coaching Podcast. This is your host, Trevor White.
And Shane Smith.
All right, welcome to today's show. Today's topic is this. You've got to let go in order to grow. So this is going to be a good show, especially for any of you guys out there who are stuck in growth, right? You've started out, you're ambitious, you're doing your thing, and you get stuck. And there's a lot of reasons you get stuck. And between Shane and I, we have been stuck ourselves many, many times in the growth into what it takes to actually grow. And the hardest thing is having to let go. So welcome to the show, man. How are you doing today, Shane?
Doing well. I was laughing about the topic of today's show just because that's continually an issue, right? And as you grow and get bigger, you're gonna have to let go of more and more stuff, and it gets. I actually think it gets harder and harder. I mean, for me,
yeah, for sure. Well, you can think about it. When you start out in the game, it's just you. Like, it's not like there's this. It's just you, right? So there's no roles. You don't have standard operating procedures. You don't have departments. It's not like there's all these people. It's you,
right?
You're everything.
It's just me, and it's just one or two staff members, or it's just one associate. So you can be involved in everything, and then as you grow, you've got to let go of more and more stuff. And when I talk to smaller law firms, a lot of times the lawyer's doing everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we see it in doctors' offices too, where the doctor's doing everything, and they have an office manager, which is really a glorified receptionist, or a secretary. They just take notes, take messages, and call people and relay messages. I mean, they're not doing any work, so nothing's been let go, which is one of the reasons why they're stuck. And that's, or we talk to lawyers and they've got no intake team. They're trying to do it all themselves or do it hodgepodge between the receptionist and themselves. And I'm like, this is a problem, dude.
It's hard though. Is that sometimes that they don't see it as a problem, right? They don't see that what they're doing is the problem because they're the guy or they're the girl. Like, does that make sense? Like, because that's how it was for me. Like, I was the one, and I had this story running in my head that nobody could do it as good as me.
Yeah.
And I was the one that had to do it because it had to be done my way because I'm the one that made the results. And I had like some success that kind of showed that, right? So I was like, well, no one can do sales calls but me because I'm the only one. I know how to do it. I know how to convert these leads, these names, these people, these cases, whatever. I know how to convert them. No one else can. So I can't let anybody do that. And I know how to market, so I'm going to be the one that's doing the marketing, and then I can fulfill. I'm the best at this and this and this, and so it turns out that I'm the best at everything.
Right.
That's my mind, which is why I won't let someone else actually take over. And even I remember hiring someone to do these different tasks, and I would hire them, and then I wouldn't let them do it.
Yeah. Or they got no. I mean, Trevor, it's so much. I'm the best at this. I actually used to have to play music, have some kind of sound in my office because it was catty corner for my receptionist, and I didn't like the way she was answering the phone, right? Or I would be like, "This is," and she was answering the phone perfectly fine, and even fairly close to the script I'd made her, but it was just a little, the follow-up stuff was always different, right? And I'm like, and I had to put something on so I couldn't hear her because otherwise I wanted to go in there and tell her how to respond to every question when she was really just transferring it to somebody in the office.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a classic symptom of not wanting to let go of anything.
Yeah.
And
who was the first person that you hired? So when you started out and started your firm, like what was the first, or did you start by hiring? Like, did you come out of it and you're like, oh, I know I need these people. Like, what was it like for you?
I'm trying to think back, and I know my wife started working for me part-time right away. And I think I hired my babysitter, my kid's babysitter, to do some collections work. So at that time I was doing a little bit of criminal law, a little bit of personal injury work, and we were taking payment plans on the criminal law stuff. And she would call on Thursdays and be like, hey, where's the money? Shane needs to come pick it up on Friday. And we got her because we knew her, and she was like 18 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And we just plugged her into that. Now, shortly after that, I hired like a case manager, somebody to follow up on bills and records and talk to the clients while I was doing other things.
Yeah.
But she was the first one. My wife, if she counts, was number one, and then the babysitter, and then we moved into some other staff members kind of deal on the personal injury side.
Right. And that case manager was really your first like full
Yeah,
time
it
employee. That
was.
was like
Yeah.
a genuine hire in. What was it like for you to have to start letting stuff go for her?
I didn't struggle with that part because I was like because the place I had left, I was basically just copying their structure.
Ah,
Right? So they had it easy, but if I think back, I was doing all the same stuff I was doing at the old firm at the new firm, right? So I was like, oh, I need a case manager for this, but I was still taking all the intake calls.
right.
I was still doing everything I did there, I was doing on my own firm. And probably the biggest, hardest hire for me in the beginning was we were about 6 people, and I decided to hire like an office manager
Mm.
because that was all overhead, right? I couldn't just,
Yeah.
I was hiring somebody to help manage and make my job easier. And that was the first hard hire for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because to me it was all overhead, right?
Yeah.
And that was a big one. Another really hard one was about a year later when I hired my first associate to work for me because I was making a shift over to just running the firm as opposed to doing the legal work. And I was like, I might lose money.
Right.
I thought because it was a big deal, right? I mean, I was paying, I think, 100 grand plus a split of the profits kind of deal. So I was like, I
Mm-hmm.
think I'm going to lose money. But at that point, I was working, I think 70, 80 hours. I wasn't counting because it was too sad to count how many hours I was
Right.
working.
Yeah.
Uh, and I worked every weekend. That year, I missed 3 weekends I didn't work. So I was like, something has to change or I'm going to die. And I hired him. And that was a tough hire. I was very nervous, very stressed, worried about cash flow, worried about everything,
Mm-hmm.
and put him in place. And it was great. I made actually I made more money the year after I hired him than I did the year before. Right? Even with his salary and commission.
Yeah.
Um, and I got to spend a little time with my wife and kids too. I mean, so
Yeah. Well, you bought back your time, right? It's
yeah,
like going from the hustler, you can do everything,
yeah,
which is what you need. If you don't have that mindset, then you're going to be very unsuccessful anyways. Like there's
yeah,
not going to be much you're going to be able to produce because you just can't hustle, right? You got to be able to work hard. Like this, like the given for success, scalability, going building a multi-million-dollar firm or anything. Like you have to have that.
right.
But there comes this point at which what you did to get you to that point it will never push you further.
No, I mean, and it was tough when I quit taking every intake call, right? Because I was like, I can close better than anybody, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, if they need us, they're signing the paperwork kind of deal.
Yeah.
I was taking it all on the phone, and when I had to give that away and then realize that, yes, but if they're doing it and they're 80% or even 70% as good as me, I can go do something else with all my time.
Mm-hmm.
And that was super tough. Uh,
Well, let me ask you this: because obviously you're not just starting. I mean, this is like years and years and years ago. Like you guys did over
yeah,
20 million last year. So now, how is the mindset any different? How has it changed? I'm sure it's different, but how has it changed now with the firm that you have now, which is it's not one or two employees. You've got well over 150 employees
yeah,
that work for you, and so you have this new world, but there's still this element that exists there of having to let go. That
yeah.
doesn't ever go away. How is it different now for you?
So in some ways, it's the same, right? Like only the number is a little bit bigger, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like back then, a new overhead position, cost me 50, 60 grand, which, you know, in hindsight now is, now I pay three, what I mean, 3 times that amount. But I
Yeah.
still worry about it, right? Which is in some ways silly because my revenue numbers were smaller back then as now, but I'm like, you just can't keep adding bodies. So I mean, still that's the same. The way it's different is the stuff you're letting go. I used to let go of things so I could do more work,
Mm-hmm.
and do more attorney work and do, and that's easy to justify, right? Like
Right.
I'm adding people so I can do more attorney work and I can push the lower level work down to somebody who's more appropriate.
Right.
Now, I'm handing work away for other people to do it in their own way versus exactly how I want. And as I shift into, and I shifted into manager role a long time ago, but now it's even shifting more into, okay, now I've got to do more strategy. I think when you're smaller, a lot of times we skip the strategy, or the strategies are much simpler
Mm-hmm.
because everything's smaller. So it doesn't take as much time, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and you can pivot quicker. Whereas now the strategy and understanding, now my plan has to be articulated in a way that I can get my leaders to buy into it so they can then articulate it to their staff. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just got to be that much more clear. Whereas before I was the only one explaining it to them, right?
Yeah.
So it's everything from my mouth to their ears is boom. But now it's I've got to explain it to them and then get them to explain it to their
Yeah.
team and sometimes their person below them. So
Yeah,
it's just more
the
strategy, less
telephone
work.
game. Yeah, the telephone game, right?
Yeah,
What you're describing, bro, is basically you're saying you have to get better at it. So you
yeah.
have to be better at letting go as you grow. Not It's not like you're going to grow to a certain point in your business that it becomes easy to let go.
No, I think it gets worse and worse. I
Yeah,
mean,
it gets harder and harder. Which means if you're sitting at a level where you got one or two or even five employees that are working for you and you're trying to build it and you're struggling to let go there, it's not going to get easier, right? It's like looking at that and realizing, okay, I have to solve. It's like solving the problem when it's really small, or let the problem get really, really big and then solve it because it's a
yeah,
fire sitting in front of you and you have to solve it. It's much easier to defeat it when it's like right here and really small in this.
yeah,
So like looking at it in growth, I think the hardest, you hit on it a little bit, like growth and letting go of the way it's done too. This is what's hard. It's like if you're the smartest guy, and I experienced this plenty in business where I thought I was the smartest guy, especially when I was young, right? I was the one, I was the man, and this was
yeah,
the story and narrative I dealt with, right? As there was that was me, I was the guy, and so I thought I was the smartest. So I would bring people in, and I would still be smarter than them. So even if they came to me with new ideas on the way to do things, it was kind of like, well, we don't do that here. That's not how we do it here.
yeah,
Right? Here's how we do it here. Right? I even used the term, I'm like, whose name's on the building? Is it your name? No, it's my name. So until your name's on the building, you're going to do it my way. And it was the craziest thing because I would bring people in who had insight that would have actually been very helpful for me to experience but I wouldn't let go of control
yeah,
of anything, even when I had people in place to do the thing. And there was a time I was sitting there with my wife, and she was actually there with me. She was working for me just a little bit at the time, and we had our teams doing their thing, and she's looking at me. She's, "Oh, Trevor, what if you just let them do their job?" And I'm looking at her, I'm like, what are you talking about? They are doing their job. I'm like, but they're shitty at it. They keep look at they're doing this wrong. Like they're doing, and she just looks at me, she's like, are they doing it wrong or are they just doing it different than you?
yeah,
And I was like, what? And right, she had a way of speaking to me that I listened, right?
yeah,
Anyone else, aside from maybe a business coach that I would hire, no one else could speak to me the way she could. And it
yeah,
actually let me hear it. So I sat there, and that was the first time I saw it. And this is when my company was doing, we were, I don't know, two and a half, 3 million a year. So it's not like we were small. It's not like we weren't doing
yeah.
anything, right? We were doing something. We're having some kind of success. And my wife just says that to me. And I just sat there and I watched. And I was like, okay, I'm going to experiment. I'm going to let them do their job. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. Like, I think back now, even because that was really the first time that I actually let go.
Yeah.
And it was like, I was like, okay. And it wasn't even for me, it wasn't even growth. I wasn't even thinking growth at the time. It was just my stress levels were through the roof. And I was kind of what you were talking. I'm putting in 80 hours a week. I mean, and I was never home. I was missing everything. This is half the reason my wife came to work with me, because if she didn't, she wouldn't see me.
Right.
So I had to bring her, or I'd never see her. And so she asked me that question. And I think her frustration, I don't think she told me this, her frustration was that I had payroll of people that were doing a job, and I was still doing the job that I was paying people to do, and I was still gone. So not only were we making less money because I was paying people to do a thing, I wasn't even letting them do the thing. I was still so involved in the thing with them. And so but she asked me, and I let them do their job.
Yeah.
And fast forward just a couple of weeks, all of a sudden I start to realize, I'm like, oh, I had a hard time admitting it. I didn't admit this for a while, but I saw it right off, but I didn't admit it for a while. But what I saw was some of the ways they did things was better than mine.
And
And my ego was like, no, You can't admit this. Never tell anyone this is the case because you're the guy. You're the guy. And but my team, because that was their only focus, right?
Yeah.
It's like
Right.
hiring a sales guy that all they do is sell. If I'm selling and I'm trying to run a company and I'm trying to create relationships and I'm dealing with market and I'm dealing with the backside, I'm doing all those things, my energy is scattered all over. But a sales guy, all he is doing is the one thing, which means he's going to have better reps than me, and ultimately he'll be better than me. And
Yeah.
that's like
That's
the
the goal.
goal. But I struggled, and even it wasn't like I had this moment that happened, that situation happened, and then I was like cured of not wanting to get
Yeah.
myself involved. But at least for the first time, I saw it. And then what was the byproduct, which was crazy, my I all of a sudden had the time that I didn't have before to go after new clients.
Yeah.
So the very thing I was really, really good at, I had been not been doing it very much because we had risen to a point and I couldn't grow past it because there was no time for it because I was down here dealing
Right.
with basic tasks and making sure that they were done exactly how I wanted. And what was weird, I was managing the nuance of the task, not the result. And that's what I really had to let go of was that people are smarter and they'll find a better way to the solution. As long as we're getting to the solution and we're hitting our targets, that I'll bring people. Yeah. And that's probably one of the most valuable lessons I've learned in business because
Well,
without
and
that, yeah.
I think it's so hard because if you read stuff nowadays, they tell you, and as a small business owner, to do an SOP for everything, right? To
Mhm.
document everything, get it all done the way you want, and then give it to them, train them, check it, which reinforces the idea that my way is the only way.
Yeah.
And I think
Well, here's the rub, bro. Is that wrong to give them an SOP?
not, I don't think it's wrong, uh,
No.
but I think being willing, and I think at a certain point it changes, right? Like I think when you're 7 to 10 people, maybe it makes sense to say like, hey, this, do it my way. But
Yeah.
there's a certain size where that starts breaking apart, right? Where you're no longer probably the best at it kind of deal.
Yeah.
And you, especially as you grow and you start bringing in managers and
Hmm.
even mid-level managers or team leads who are down in the weeds doing with the process that you developed, but you haven't been in it in a year,
Yeah.
stuff comes up and changes differently,
Yeah.
and if we're not open to either letting that stuff go or at least getting back down to the trenches, you're not, you're too rigid and it's not going to work.
Yeah.
And I struggle with this. I mean, I still struggle with it's one of those issues where I think we all like to be the hero or we all like to be central to our group, our business.
Hmm.
And if everybody can do their own job better than you get to the point where it's like, what do they need me for? Well, they need you for a whole bunch of things. I mean,
Yeah.
and you and I have talked about it. They need you to be the visionary. They need you to be the strategist. They need you to do your unique thing that nobody else can do. Which there's probably something in your business you're better. Like you were a great salesman, so
Yeah.
but yet you're not selling. You're doing fulfillment and probably a bunch of stupid stuff.
Yep.
I mean,
Yeah, and it's exactly how it happens. Well, and dude, I mean, the easiest visual on it is right. The captain of the ship isn't in the engine room making sure the
yeah.
engine runs. He
I
has people to do that. The captain of the ship is sitting up in with a vantage point on the highest point of the ship, so he can see everything. He has people communicating what's going on in the ship, and then he's making decisions based upon the input he's receiving from all the others who are down in the weeds. The second the captain leaves the helm and he goes down into the ship, no one is leading the ship.
right. Yeah, nobody's up there seeing the whole picture, right?
Yep. And that's the problem. But when you're up there trying to see the whole picture, you don't see the simple nuances that happen inside of each individual role. This is why we grow and we build this way. And you have to have team leads. You have to have all that structure. I think something that comes confusing though is tough. Is like who's the right hire? How do you know when to let go?
Yeah.
How did you know when? Like when you were building, I kind of have, I have where I knew, but
Yeah.
how did you know what was the right one? What was the right move? Because this is what I guarantee a lot of our listeners
Yeah.
struggle with, right? It's like, okay, I get the concept. I got to let
Yeah.
go of what?
Yeah.
What do I let go of,
Two,
right?
two things come to mind early on, right? One is I looked up, and at the time, I used to write most of my checks on Friday, right? I wrote all my client checks, all my provider checks, all my case expense checks, my own check. I wrote all the checks on Friday, and I rolled into work one morning at either 8 or 9, I don't remember which, and I wrote checks, And when I was done writing checks, it was 12:30.
Mm.
And I was like, oh shit, I spent half my day, 3.5 or 4 hours writing freaking checks. This is dumb. This is not doing anything smart, just
Yeah.
writing checks. Here's a piece of paper, write the check.
Yeah.
And
Busy work.
yeah, and
Pure
I
busy work.
realized, so at that point I was like, this is a bad use of my time.
Hmm.
Uh, I need to hand this off. And that was one that stuck right out in my head. And another one, and this just shows how foolish we are sometimes. I needed something mailed, and my regular, mail person was doing a specific task I wanted to do for me, and I was like, I'll just take it to the post office, right? Even though I had 20 people who worked for me at the time, Trevor,
Right.
all making noticeably less money than me. I was like, I'll just take it to the post office, and that trip to the post office took me like 35 minutes,
Hmm.
and because I'm waiting in line to pay and doing all this
Yeah.
other stupid stuff, and I'm like, this is dumb. I should probably never go to the post office again.
Yeah.
Right? Because I'm looking, I'm like, I pay her, I think at the time, $11 an hour. I had a bunch of people I paid $15, $16 an hour. I'm like, and here I am, the guy who owns the firm, who's the best at closing, the best at settlements, the best at a whole bunch of things. And I'm standing in a line at the post office. So those were two things that
Yeah.
slapped me in the face and said, I need to do this. Um,
So you're identifying like the obvious, right, tasks that you shouldn't be doing, right? And they're not the money makers. They're the tasks
right.
that you could easily throw someone else into, and it's like you doing, right? If you're, we'll just put it to an hourly rate. If you make $100 an hour, just keep round numbers, and you can pay someone $10 an hour to do this task, that makes no sense for you to go do that. I think what can get confusing though too is then, well, does that mean you're better than the task? Does that mean you're too good to do that? No, it doesn't mean you're too good for it, right? Even the CEO can take out the garbage.
Right.
But
But
is
it's
it the
just a
most
waste of your
effective
time. I mean,
use?
it's as
Yeah.
bad as it sounds, it's a waste of your time, right? It's a
Yeah.
waste of your experience. It's a waste of your
Mm-hmm.
education, a waste of your skills. I mean, just like and to be quite honest, somebody else would be happy to do that job,
Yeah.
right? Somebody is happy to do that for $15 an hour versus you who's begrudging your time to do it for $15 an hour when there honestly there's more stuff that's more effective, right?
Yeah.
And what drove it home for me was I had a buddy one time who made us run through the what's your hourly wage rate or
Mm-hmm.
hourly wage, right? You go through that whole process, you take
Yeah.
your take home and divide it by 2,000 hours or whatever. And he goes, and if you make $100 an hour and this is $15 an hour work, you'd almost be better off to go take a nap for an hour so you could come back and work focused for 3 hours than you would to stay awake and do that $15 an hour task for an hour.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's a crazy way to look at it. But the more I bought into that concept, the better, right? And we do this with our home life all the time.
Yeah.
We outsource our landscaping to somebody who's happy to have the job and it costs us less money. You
Yeah.
can outsource domestic help, a cleaner. I mean, all we do it all there, but then in the office, we still try to keep everything and do it ourselves.
Yeah.
Or say, well, I don't want to spend the money, so I'm going to do it. I mean, I see lawyers do this with bill and records all the time. They're like, I'm going to order all the bills and records myself, or I'm going to do all that. Like, really, you can pay that. You can either outsource it or pay somebody 15, $20 an hour, and you can go do things to close the client better, to make the case better, just have better empathy with the client, your own client, or even settle the case better. But instead, you're doing busy work for it's $15 an hour work.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, it'll never lead to this is a scalability problem, right? So
yeah,
not because most people won't even see it, right? They don't spend time to even identify what are the tasks I should not be doing,
yeah,
and then realizing what are my money making tasks. And realistically, as a firm grows, that's what you need to be spending your time on. How am I bringing more revenue into the company? How am I bringing it and then building a foundation to support the revenue, but building more revenue? As soon as you take your eye off revenue, any business, I mean, this is law firm, this is any business. If you don't bring revenue in the front door,
yeah,
I don't care how many tasks you're doing or not doing, it won't matter. So that's like, here's the hard part though. What if you're good at the thing and it is bringing in money? So this is what I experienced, right?
yeah,
So I think you have one side, you're doing stupid tasks you shouldn't do, right? That's one reason that you don't want to, or the one identifier of how do I let go. The other one is harder to identify, I think, because it's when you're good at it, right? And for
yeah,
me, it's sales. right? I'm just good at it. I've done it a lot. I've just been in sales. Am I the greatest salesman in the world? According to me, I am, but I'm sure I'm not actually the greatest salesman in the world, right? But I think to be a good salesman, you kind of think you're good.
Right.
But I'm pretty damn good at it. And I look at sales as this environment where I was the only one that could do it, right? And no one else. And so even when I would hire people in, and they would bring them in as setters, right? They would be like part of an intake type thing, right? Where
Yeah.
they're coming in and they're just setting to me, which means it takes my time and energy and effort. But it made sense to me because, well, this is how I make money. This is how my company makes money. And if they don't talk to me, then no one else can close them. This was the story, the narrative running through my head. Now, in some respects, it's true because I would bring people on in sales and I would, audit their calls and I'd sit there and I'd listen to them. I'm like biting my tongue the whole time because they're not great or they're not as good as I would have done or what you
Right.
were talking about earlier. Like, well, yeah, they're doing it wrong. I have to put the, sound up so I don't hear my receptionist.
Yeah.
I love that. That's hilarious, by the way. But like do it. I had all these stories and narratives. The problem was, so here's what I'm getting at, because the second area of that you have to be able to let go of and you have to be able to identify is, where are you the constraint?
Right. The
See,
bottleneck.
I was the constraint in growth because I'm just me. I can't invent hours in the day. So even if I built the front end up to where I had so many leads coming in to close, I run out of time. And this happened all the time, where leads would get pushed and then they would get pushed again. And then I would get called into something else that wasn't sales. Let's say it was a
Right.
Monday, Tuesday, I had and a Wednesday I had all these sales calls scheduled. My setters filled my schedule up. This happened a lot. And it would be full, like 8 hours of calls, like 8 scheduled hours, which is more like 12 hours of work because you have little breaks in between. So my whole day is booked up in calls back to back. Problem is, I'm trying to run a company.
Yep.
So that doesn't work. It just, in my mind, I thought it would work, but I'm an idiot. Obviously, we're all idiots as we're growing our company. And so this would happen. And then come Wednesday, I had some fires I had to put out with the company, right? With bigger vision shit, which
Right.
every one of those calls would then get rescheduled or canceled or moved or whatever, because some of them wouldn't reschedule. They're like, fine,
Right.
right? So I'm looking at, we're spending all this money to bring these leads in the front door. I'm paying for my setters to set me, but because I'm the only closer, because I'm the only one that can do it, I'm literally losing money. I'm throwing away money because it's just me with this. And I would make these delusional ideas in my head that I could do this and that. And I'm like literally looking at it. In order for me to do what I was saying I was going to do most of the time, it would require me to work probably 22 hours a day.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not possible. I'm like, so we were stunted like crazy because I was holding on to the fact that I was really good at that and it brought in money. And so
Yeah.
I think that's the hard thing to identify because it's working, right? It
Right. Yeah.
doesn't work for you to go to the post office. It doesn't work for you to sit and write checks. That's like, oh yeah, those are the dumb tasks I need to get rid of because that's not making me any money. These are wasting time,
Right.
right? You didn't make any money by writing checks. You didn't make any money by going to the post office or about 1,000 other tasks I'm sure you could list out. Me too. But I am making money selling. So I'm like, shit, I have to let that go in order to grow. That was tough. That one's the harder one. I think a lot of people will find themselves in because you'll have it's like the lowest hanging fruit. Yeah, get rid of these dumb tasks. But what
Yeah.
about, like, because this is scales of growth, right? It's like to grow to 1 million, there's certain things you have to be involved in. But to grow to 5 million, you've got to let go of almost everything you were doing at 1 million. And then to grow from 5 to 10 and
Yeah.
10 to 20, the shit you got to let go of at 20 is dramatic. I mean, it's not even the
Oh
same
yeah.
benefit.
No, and it keeps getting harder, right? And it
Yeah.
keeps getting narrower, and it's a different skill set. Like the biggest issue I see with small, newer firms, and that probably everybody below, I'm going to say probably 6 or 7 million, is the idea that, well, all the clients want to talk to me because my name is
Right.
at the door. And this is not constrained to law firms. It's all over business. I want to talk to the guy who owns the company, right? I want to talk to Shane because his name is on the door. The client's going to want to talk to me.
Yeah.
So I can have somebody screen the calls and do the front sale, but I got to make the close. And every client wants to talk to Shane, supposedly. That's the story, right? And we tell ourselves that as lawyers, and you know, and we do it with every relationship. Everybody's got to have one with me. And you know, in hindsight, it was totally foolish, right? To
Mhm.
have this story. Um, but in reality, it's not. I mean, that's the fear, right? That's
Sure.
everybody's fear. And that's the hardest part to let go. To the idea that every client's not mine, that it's the firm's client, but not mine.
Yeah.
And that, you can put people in place to answer like 99% of those only Shane questions. Because I did, right? And I, one of the I even just trained my team to say, hey, yeah, Shane's super busy, but we're gonna put you on his calendar to talk about it. But if you'll tell me what the call is about, let me see if I can help you now. Or Shane just needs to know in advance what the call is about and what the issue is so that he's prepared when he calls you, he can answer the question. So tell me what it's about. And then my staff would go, oh, I can help you with that. Let me answer this. Boom. And it took care of like 99% of those issues.
Yeah.
But it was just a simple reframe and cut loose that liar, that story that everybody's going to want to only talk to Shane, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's only going to want to talk to me because I'm the man.
Well, and when you started, that was true.
It was, yeah.
That's what's hard, dude, because you're taking something that worked and was the reality. That was actually true at one point.
Yeah.
But then it became the very truth, the very thing became the constraint to grow to the next level. This is the hardest. It's easy. It's really easy for you and I to sit and talk about it because we've been there.
Yeah.
We've been down the road and we've seen exactly where it's at. Where it becomes almost impossible is when you're in it. Because when you're in it, you cannot see it. You don't see it. It took me forever to get some of these different ideas. And that was just stopping and limiting growth and adding to my high levels of stress and coping and trying to deal with it. No doubt, had I had some mentor, somebody who could have waved a magic wand and just like helped me see this stuff way earlier, I'm confident my life would have been a little different. I don't think I would have found the bottom of a rum bottle as much as I did.
And that's where you talk about it. It's when you're in it, when you're in the weeds, when everything's on fire, or you're so busy, right? I I'm pretty good at dealing with fires, right? And I'm even really good at preventing fires. What I struggle with is I will overcommit, so I have no time to really be outside the box, right? And that's easy to do for many of our lawyers who are running stuff is they just overbook and they set their schedule. Hey, we got to do all these things, and then they have no time to even see that they're the constraint, right? That the issue is we can't do more of this because there's no room on your calendar, and then we say, well, find some room. Well, what are we magically going to do, right? An hour consult can't go down to 30 minutes. It doesn't work,
Nope.
So and I think it's so easy when you're in like one of the group call, right? One of the group calls for somebody to explain their situation and somebody be like, dude, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
Right? You, you need to quit doing that.
Yeah.
Somebody else can call them out on it who's familiar with the structure of how law firms are, and just be like you say, if I'd had a mentor or a coach smack you around and say, what are you doing?
No.
It's super quick. And it would be super quick to me. Somebody say, hey, here you go. But I mean, I didn't really have anybody that I was close enough to or free enough to talk about those things back in the day, or I could just discuss it. And honestly, I probably couldn't even articulate what the issue is.
Yeah.
Because
now you wouldn't even have known. You wouldn't even have known. That's the rub. You're stuck in this narrative that you can't even see.
Yeah.
Right, dude. This is the reason you and I started the Legal Edge. Like it was the sole reason because you and I've gone through it and we're looking at so many people that suffer from this thing and they can't see it. It's like for me being in sales. At one point it made sense.
Yeah.
And then it didn't make sense anymore. And I didn't know when that was because I was in it. All I knew was that. So that became my standard operating procedure. And the company ran just fine. Payroll was being made. We were all making money. Right. And granted, I was burning my life down.
Right. That's where we see, right? I think that's the key is because when it's all making money, even if it's not the money you want, but it's the money you need, it's hard to go in and say, hey, I'm going to break this by sending this to somebody else and maybe they don't do as great as me.
Yeah.
Right? And
all I saw was failure in that. Like that's literally all I saw. I saw if you take me out of this, i.e. if I take me out of this, we fail.
Yeah.
Because I don't see how we go forward. What blah blah blah. It was all and it's all lies. It's all this narrative that doesn't exist. And dude, as we kind of wrap up today's show, I think that's the premise you come to. Like we have to let go, but you got to be able to see it. And if you're doing this without someone in your corner to help you see this,
yeah,
I'm not to say it's impossible, but man,
it's really hard though. I mean,
really hard
because we do stupid things, right? We keep doing something over and over and over because it's working just well enough.
Yep. And when we start to see it, we'll see that we're doing it and we shouldn't be. We'll still keep doing it.
Yeah.
Because it's easier to keep doing what's certain than it is to take the uncertain move when you
Right.
don't know if it's
Because
the right
it's
one.
painful too, right? Having to hire somebody, having to screen them out, having to train them how to find the right person. All of that is a lot of times it seems easier, and it definitely is in the short term just to keep doing it.
Yep.
Right. Instead, I'll just work late tonight, babe. I'll just cancel my date with my wife. I'll just miss the kid's birthday party, or,
Yep.
I don't want to go to that party anyway. So
Mhm.
you just go, I'll just I got work. I don't
Yep.
want to go to my in-laws. I
Mhm.
got work. There's a whole bunch of reasons we can justify to stay in the pain versus trade it for a different short-term pain so that long-term we don't have it.
Well, it's like it's the pain that'll be thrust on you, or it's the pain you choose.
Yeah.
Choose the pain of growth, or feel the pain of stagnation. And stagnation kills you. Literally, it
I
kills your relationships.
100%. I mean,
It kills everything. But
it,
growth is painful. But
yeah.
it's the pain you're choosing. But making sure you're doing it with like the bumpers on, right? Again, back to this is why Legal Edge exists.
Yeah.
So any final thoughts you have for everybody today on this idea of letting go to
Yeah,
grow?
I'm just going to further complicate it and say, hey, there's a fine line between delegation and abdication, and
Oh yeah.
you want to make sure you don't wander into that one. And that's probably enough for us to talk about on a whole different topic another day, abdication versus delegation. But just be
Yes.
careful
We
of
could
that as
probably have
well.
several shows on that one, bro.
Yeah. So that's all I got, Trevor.
Yeah. Well, take a look at your guys' world. Like, take a look at your firm right now. Like, look at your firm. I want you to ask yourself two simple questions. Are you doing tasks you know you should not be doing? Is there something you're doing right now that you literally have staff on hand, whether they're full time or part time, that they could be doing this thing, but you simply do it because you've always done it, right? Is that one thing? Or second thing, second question I want you to ask yourself. That's number one. Now, number two, where are you the constraint? Right now, if you had your dream life, then it would already exist. You could snap your fingers, but there's something holding you back, and it's you. So look at way you do things right now. Where is the constraint? Right? You've hit certain economic levels. You've hit these. Where do you block it? Where, if you could remove yourself and replace yourself, would you be able to actually grow and scale? So take some time, look at both of those little things, and importantly, right? We have the Legal Edge coaching, right? Head over to legaledgecoaching.com, and inside of that website, I'll give you all the information on what it is that we do, how we do what we do, and how we help attorneys just like you to be able to overcome these types of things, to be able to scale, to grow. And this isn't some foo-foo whatever it is. I mean, this is real tactics of exactly what you did, Shane. It's exactly how you grew your firm. It's the map and the road and the process on how to do this. So you can figure it out on your own, or you can follow a path. I mean, I'm not smart at all, but I do climb in the mountains sometimes, and if there's a trail in front of me, it's a whole hell of a lot easier than if I'm just going through the jungle. Right? A little bit different. So we're offering up the map on that. So go head over to legaledgecoaching.com and you get information on that. And if you got value from today's show and you know somebody who is in this process or would get value from today's show as well, please share the show up. Please share it up so that they can also maybe learn how to let go of some shit they're holding on to right now they need to let go of. So other than that, I appreciate you guys being on today's show. That brings us to a wrap. Have a fantastic rest of your day.
Talk to you later, guys.